June 21st, 1911, New York Harbor. The largest ship in the world is arriving for the first time, RMS Olympic, 882 feet, 45,000 tons, 4 funnels. In minutes, she'll enter New York Harbor escorted by a fleet of boats. Thousands of New Yorkers are watching from the shore, but as she passes her rival, the Lusitania, something unexpected happens. The German captain refuses to salute her. This is RMS Olympic, June 21st, 1911, the day the world's largest ship arrived in New York. June 21st, 1911, early morning, New York Harbor. RMS Olympic, the largest ship ever built, is approaching New York for the first time. She has just passed the Ambrose lightship, the entrance to the harbor. Captain Edward Smith orders the engines slowed. Olympic reduces speed as she enters American waters. But she cannot proceed directly to her pier. First, she must stop at Quarantine, anchored off Staten Island. This is routine, required by law. Every ship entering New York must stop here first. Doctors come aboard. They inspect every passenger, looking for signs of illness or disease. If anyone shows symptoms, fever, cough, rash, they will be sent to the hospitals on nearby Swinburne Island or Hoffman Island. Quarantine islands, isolation, sometimes for weeks. But Olympic's passengers are healthy. The crossing was smooth. 5 days, 15 hours from Southampton. The doctors give her a clean bill of health. Third-class passengers are ordered to disembark here. They board smaller boats heading to Ellis Island. Ellis Island, the gateway to America, where immigration officials will inspect their papers, check their health again, decide who can enter the United States and who cannot. First and second-class passengers, they get a quick inspection aboard the ship, while Olympic lies at anchor off Staten Island. Press photographers steam out in small boats, capturing the first photographs of the grand new liner in American waters. New Yorkers who woke up early get a splendid view, the massive ship silhouetted against the morning sky. One reporter writes, "The view of the liner at Quarantine as she loomed up off Staten Island gave an impression of immense bulk. She looked to be a genuine sea monster." Olympic bears the telltale signs of a maiden voyage. Sections of black paint along her lower hull have been scuffed and washed away by the rough Atlantic seas. This is common on all new ships. They haven't yet built up multiple layers of protective paint. At 7:45 a.m., Olympic weighs anchor. She begins her journey up the Hudson River, heading for Pier 59.
Olympic steams slowly up the Hudson River. A fleet of local riverboats escorts her. Tugboats, ferries, steamers, all blasting their whistles and sirens, welcoming the largest ship in the world. The noise is deafening, celebratory, a cacophony of sound. Thousands of New Yorkers line the waterfront, waving flags, cheering, watching the massive liner pass. Stewardess Violet Jessup, working aboard Olympic on this maiden voyage, will remember this moment for the rest of her life. Decades later, she writes in her memoir, "At last, the ship got her clean bill of health and proceeded majestically up the Hudson, flag bedecked and gaily escorted by all manner of official and unofficial small craft. Past the huge buildings on Battery Park, the wharves and ships, all of which appeared to shimmer with the moving, cheering mass of people gathered together. Not a window, however small, had but a little flag or handkerchief waving from it." Among the hundreds of passengers watching from Olympic's deck is Harland and Wolff engineer John Kempster, camera in hand, capturing photographs as the ship makes her way up the river. Then, as Olympic approaches Cunard's Pier 54, she meets her main rival for the first time, the Lusitania. Cunard's champion, the fastest ship on the Atlantic, holder of the Blue Ribbon speed record. Lusitania is packed with hundreds of passengers ready to depart at any moment, heading back to Liverpool. Her captain is J. Charles, one of the best captains in the Cunard line, experienced, proud. He stands on Lusitania's bridge, watching Olympic pass. Tradition dictates that ships salute one another, a dip of the ensign, a blast of the whistle, professional courtesy, respect between mariners. But Captain Charles does neither. He does not blow Lusitania's whistle. He does not dip her ensign. Silence, a deliberate snub. The dozens of reporters at the pier notice immediately. They scribble notes. This will be in tomorrow's newspapers. Olympic continues past, silent, ignoring the insult. Once Olympic clears Lusitania's stern, the smaller liner departs, in silence, heading home to Liverpool. Rivalry, competition, the North Atlantic shipping lanes are a battleground for prestige and profit.
It is around 9 a.m. when Olympic arrives at Pier 59. Violet Jessup remembers this moment vividly. As we neared the dock, many haughty-looking tugs, for tugs always have impressed me with that appearance, carrying their heads in the air, came to meet us. Thrusting their noses into the side of the great hulk, puffing frantically as they pushed her into the berth. 12 tugboats are needed to help Olympic dock. 12. The ship is so massive that tugs alone cannot move her easily. One of the tugs, the O.L. Hollandbeck, gets caught in Olympic's wake, drawn toward the massive ship by the starboard propeller's suction. The tug finds herself momentarily trapped underneath Olympic's poop deck. Her superstructure is badly damaged. But she manages to pull free, limping away, damaged but afloat. Olympic herself gets into trouble a few moments later. As she turns to enter Pier 59, the Hudson's current pushes her sideways. Her hull grazes along the edge of the pier, metal scraping against wood, a grinding sound. Fortunately, the damage is minor, just some scratched paint, slightly dented plates, easily fixed. Violet Jessup. Her bows came to rest within a few inches of the dock wall, and so the proud ship came successfully into port. Docking is completed just after 10 a.m. Soon, passengers disembark, carrying away souvenirs, abstracts of the ship's log, information about the Olympic speed, mileage, and time. She made the 2,894-mile journey in 5 days, 15 hours, and 2 minutes, sailing at an average speed of 21.43 knots. Not the fastest crossing, but solid, reliable, safe. Managing Director J. Bruce Ismay, the man who conceived the Olympic-class ships, couldn't be more pleased. He quickly sends a telegram to Lord Peary, chairman of Harland and Wolff. Olympic is a marvel and has given unbounded satisfaction. Once again, accept my warmest and most sincere congratulations. The press rushes up the gangways, eager for interviews, photographs of Captain Smith, dressed in the pure white uniform of the summer season. Later in the day, company officials from the New York headquarters of the White Star Line and the International Mercantile Marine come aboard. Meetings are held, the board, the finance committee. Everyone is pleased. Olympic is a success. Shortly after Olympic's arrival, the mayor of Southampton, Edward Lance, sends a telegram to New York. The mayor and his fellow townsmen of Southampton send greetings and congratulations to the mayor and his fellow citizens of New York upon the advent of the Olympic, another link in the chain of friendship binding our two countries together in terms of peace and amity. Signed, Lance, Mayor. The mayor of New York, William Gaynor, quickly replies, "The Olympic has arrived and the mayor of New York returns his congratulations and those of the people of New York to you and your people. Someday we will return the compliment by sending over to you a still bigger ship." Signed, W. Gaynor, Mayor. Olympic is later dressed in flags, signal bunting from bow to stern, celebrating her successful maiden arrival. Docked on either side of her are the Oceanic and the Cedric, both White Star ships, also dressed in flags. Oceanic, White Star's old flagship from 1999, shares an interesting connection with Olympic.
White Star almost always ordered ships in pairs, but Oceanic never got a sister. One had been planned. She was to be named Olympic. But White Star's uncertain financial circumstances at the turn of the century, immediately following the purchase by J.P. Morgan's International Mercantile Marine, meant the ship was canceled in June 1902.
But now an Olympic has finally been built, and she is magnificent. The largest ship in the world, a floating palace, the pride of the White Star Line. The future of White Star has never looked brighter. Olympic will go on to serve for 24 years, longer than any of her sisters. Titanic, launched just weeks after Olympic's maiden voyage, will strike an iceberg and sink on her maiden voyage in April 1912. 1,500 dead. Britannic, the third sister, will strike a mine in the Aegean Sea in 1916. She will sink in 55 minutes. The youngest sister, gone before her time. But Olympic, she will survive. She will serve as a troop ship in World War I, transporting over 200,000 soldiers, earning the nickname Old Reliable. She will ram and sink a German U-boat, the only passenger liner ever to sink a submarine in combat. She will survive multiple torpedo attacks, near misses, close calls. And after the war, she will return to passenger service, sailing the North Atlantic for another 17 years. Finally retired in 1935, scrapped in 1937. Of the three Olympic-class sisters, Olympic, Titanic, Britannic, only Olympic survived to old age. But it all began here, June 21st, 1911, New York Harbor, Pier 59. The day the world's largest ship arrived for the first time. Remember RMS Olympic, the ship that lived.